It has become a common line among people on the left wing whenever the topic of online censorship is being brought up to throw out the meme that private companies can do whatever they want. Private companies are not subject to the First Amendment. It's not a free speech issue because free speech only applies to the government. Private companies can do whatever they want. Coming from the people who think that we should nationalize absolutely everything. And of course, this was never true coming from the left wing. They know for a fact because we've seen it on Capitol Hill. Why do you think they're summoning all these CEOs to Capitol Hill in order to interrogate them about quote-unquote misinformation? That the censorship is being done on behalf of the Democratic Party, the arm twisting is being done in public, and this is not private companies just acting of their own volition, doing whatever they want. However, there is a bit of a shock to the system. There is a little bit of fear being instilled amongst the left wing, because Elon Musk has announced that he is deciding to buy Twitter. He got the financing. Twitter had to accept the offer. We've covered it multiple different times on this channel, and the deal has gone through. And Twitter is actually going to be changed from a publicly traded company to a private company, which allegedly should mean that they can do whatever they want. Of course, this has led people in the left wing to call for Twitter and all these social media companies to be turned into utilities. Funny how that works. And it has led to them calling for government regulation, which a lot of them were already calling for, of speech on the internet. Enter the Biden administration, who had been planning this all along, introducing their disinformation board, which has been affectionately labeled by people in the know as the Ministry of Truth right here on the internet.com. Now, the Ministry of Truth is under the Department of Homeland Security. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about its implications. We're going to talk about who's the head of this group, but we got a sponsor transition, so let's roll into them and catch the rest on the other side. Studies have shown that our appearance has a huge impact on our mental health. This is one of the reasons why there are so many different anti-aging products out there on the market. But the thing is, those anti-aging projects, they're garbage. They're trash. You don't want them. Stop buying them. Instead, go over to Health with Justice and get yourself this multi-collagen powder. This is absolutely the best powder out there on the market. You put one scoop in your morning beverage every single day, and it adds the collagen that your body's losing production in, thus causing the aging problems, thus solving that problem. Look at my baby skin. Look at the glow. Oh my God, healthwithjustice.com. Get yourself 51% off. Healthwithjustice.com.
Information laundering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious.
So that horrible abuse to your eardrums that you just had to deal with comes from a woman called Nina Jankowicz. And as many of you already know at this point in time, this isn't just some ridiculous, absurd person that's singing in TikTok videos about how there's evil right-wing disinformation all over the internet and something needs to be done. This person has actually been put up as the head of Homeland Security's censorship department. Now, it needs to be said that this person's political views are not hidden, they're not disguised. Where they are in the political spectrum is out there in the public, but supposedly this is all no big deal because the only thing that this Department of Homeland Security Bureau is going to be dealing with is Russian disinformation and disinformation centering around illegal immigration. And the thing is that they're going to be telling people in the Latin American world that they don't need to come here because the border's not open, because information about the border being open is just disinformation. So therefore, somehow, if you're against this censorship board from Homeland Security, then you're for illegal immigrants rushing to the border based on disinformation that's being put out in the Spanish language.
Another topic, does the president know that DHS is putting together this disinformation governance board?
Well, Peter, I think I would note, and I'm not sure if this has been in your reporting yet, but this is a continuation of work that was done under the prior administration, under the Trump administration, to take steps to address disinformation, address the use of disinformation in helping smugglers prompt the movement of more migrants across to the border. I would note that the first example given in the announcement about this was DHS's work to understand how, quote, misinformation spread by human smugglers that prey on vulnerable populations attempting to migrate to the United States. So for anyone who's out there who may be concerned about the increase in migrants to the border, this is the kind of apparatus that's working to address disinformation.
Now, the reason I bring up the illegal immigration thing and the counter-messaging information that is in Latin America telling those people to rush the border is because this This is the red herring in the project. This is the tactic that the Democrats always use, where they adopt supposedly a right-wing purpose for their thing in order to enhance their own power, and then when Republicans oppose it, they talk about how Republicans don't actually care about this issue that they campaign on.
I'd also note that the first example they gave about what they're going to do is support the Department of Homeland Security's ongoing work, back to the former administration, to address how and understand how misinformation spread by human smugglers that prey on vulnerable populations attempting to migrate to the United States.
So all this above the surface talk about how this disinformation board is specifically to make sure people in Latin America don't rush the border based on false information that tells them that the border is wide open is the veneer of which they're going to use this department to censor other things. Because remember, the other code word in there, the other buzzword, is Russian disinformation. On top of that, it needs to be made perfectly clear that Homeland Security, Immigration Services, and other government departments already have Spanish language divisions. They already have mechanisms of communicating with Spanish language media. They can already buy advertisements on Spanish language social media that tells people, no, it is not the case that the border is open. So this department is in no way, shape, or form needed for this specific service. It just doesn't make any sense at all. So this is the red herring. This is what people are going to say. Well, I guess Republicans are hypocrites about immigration if you talk about how sinister this board actually is. Because Russian disinformation, we know, is a code word for anything that the left wing doesn't like. We know that they labeled the Trump campaign Russian disinformation. All the evidence that they put forward of this Russian disinformation was about $170,000 worth of Facebook ads that didn't seem to reach that many people. A lot of them had broken English. A lot of them were put in swing states, to be honest, to cause more division. But the ads that were put forward in the non-swing states promoted things like Bernie Sanders or Black Lives Matter or whatever, anything and everything to cause division. But again, because they cost so little, because they didn't get such wide circulation, they were relatively ineffective on the 2016 election. Yet we still hear time and time again about how the Russians are coming, Russian disinformation is everywhere, and this has caused social media to censor on behalf of the Democratic Party. Yes, I'm talking about Twitter, the Hunter Biden laptop story, for example, based on the idea that it was Russian disinformation. And by the way, the head of this board, the Jankowicz woman, she actually promoted the absolute lie, the absolute disinformation and misinformation that the Hunter Biden laptop story was not legitimate and actually came from the Russians, despite the fact that we know now today that it's 100% true. So now she's the head of a government body, obviously biased in favor of the Democratic Party, and obviously pro-internet censorship, and she will be issuing edicts based on those political biases, which would have formalized what we saw during the 2020 election, a story which possibly could have altered the outcome of that election. Remember, despite the 85 million vote total for Joe Biden, when you break it down, when you cut through everything, he only won by about 40,000 votes or 30,000 votes in 3 swing states. You think if 30,000 more people would have possibly heard that Joe Biden's son was double dealing, that there was all this controversy and evidence in this laptop, that they might have changed their opinion? I think it's possible. A lot of people think it's possible. And yet it was suppressed from Twitter. And now we're going from the informal mechanisms of suppression, which is from Democratic arm twisting and labeling things Russian information, to all of a sudden the government body doing the same thing with the force of government, which will cause the media, of course, to repeat and regurgitate those premises based on what is done by this horrible, terrible singing woman.
It's how you hide a little lie, little lie. It's how you hide a little lie, little lie. It's how you hide a little lie, little lie. When Rudy Giuliani shared bad intel from Ukraine, or when TikTok influencers say COVID can cause pain, they're laundering disinfo when we really should take note and not support their lies with our wallet, voice, or vote. Oh!
Now, there's always the occasional denialist out there in the audience. There's always the occasional person who's like, well, no, listen, the Russian disinformation is definitely a serious problem, and this government body is going to 100% nail what they label Russian disinformation each and every time, and it's going to be perfectly fine. Remember, the First Amendment applies to the government, and this person definitely is going to be beholden to the First Amendment because the First Amendment is ironclad, and again, it protects you from the government. But the thing is, we don't have to speculate about this person's views of the First Amendment, because she goes far beyond the idea that private companies can do whatever they want and just being an advocate for censorship in the private sphere. She talks about how we need government regulations on misinformation and disinformation. And when she talks about the First Amendment, she doesn't talk about it as if it's a foundational principle. She doesn't talk about it as if it is the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights to our United States Constitution, aka the supreme law of the land. She talks about it as if it is an obstacle to get around because we should be more in line with Europe.
So I think it's time for us all to scrape our jaws off the floor and get to work. Not only Facebook, which has clearly been basically intransigent in fixing its own problems, but Congress, which through its own, partisanship has really lost a lot of time and created such a large hole that we now find ourselves in, with Facebook now, moving into the metaverse, which frankly, I want no part of if Facebook is at the helm. They've shown no corporate or technological responsibility to bring us into an area that could open us up to more and more harms. And we need Congress to do something about it, just like they would regulate an unsafe vehicle or airline. Well, Allie, I think that for a long time, congressmen and women just didn't believe that online harms could become offline harms. Around this time last year, I was testifying before the House Intelligence Committee, and one of the members of that committee really took issue with my thesis that disinformation was dismantling democracy. And I thought of him on January 6th when, protesters were storming the Capitol. This is clearly a public safety issue, and now that is being laid bare before us with these Facebook papers. So hopefully this is a wake-up moment for Congress people. Obviously, there are free speech issues to get around here, but this is a country of ingenuity, right? If the European Union can do this, if countries like Estonia can counter disinformation, they're small, they have less money than us, then why can't the United States do it? Let's step up to the problem and protect people.
That is Jankowicz, in her own words, within the last couple of months, talking about her view of the First Amendment, and yet she is being appointed to a position created whole cloth out of the executive branch in order to regulate disinformation and misinformation online. Somebody who thinks we need regulations on social media companies, and these regulations need to be in the vein of fighting disinformation, somewhat similar to our European counterparts who do not have a First Amendment, who actually criminalize many forms of speech that are legal in the United States of America because we got the ingenuity to get around it. So that's what she's going to be doing in this Department of Homeland Security office. She is going to be getting her lawyers together and trying to figure out unique, innovative ways to subvert your rights. Because if she says it in a light voice, maybe if she sings it to you on TikTok, you'll be like, oh wow, isn't this nice? This lady's harmless. She's basically a buffoon. No big deal. I'll definitely let her take away my free speech rights. Look at her TikTok videos of her singing on TikTok. On top of that, can we just point out the fact that we all know that TikTok is a company that is tied into the Chinese Communist Party? This woman is all about misinformation and disinformation, and yet one of her modes of communication is a company tied heavily to Communist China that is known for censorship and altering information in order to promote a certain set of values. And that is the avenue that she chooses to talk about foreign disinformation spreading on the internet. Isn't it funny how that works? Isn't it funny how we always talk about right-wing politics, anti-democratic politics, in the vein of it somehow being connected to the Russians, yet this person is operating freely on a website that is owned by a Chinese company. I know they did that thing where they transferred the American branch of it, but come on, let's be serious about what's going on here. And that's totally fine. That's no big deal. Anything that we talk about in relation to China, nothing to worry about. Shut your face. Calm down. Get out of here. We talk about the Chinese lab leak theory. This lady labels it misinformation and disinformation, and it's dangerous for you to speculate that a lab in China that specifically studied coronaviruses, that appears to be at the origin point of this coronavirus that we've all been dealing with, might have somehow led to the leak of that coronavirus. That's horrible. That's misinformation and disinformation, and now no longer will you be banned just by Twitter for spreading that obvious link and definitely plausible hypothesis. Homeland Security will be looking into you for spreading all that misinformation. Oh my god, isn't it so harmful?
The fact sheet that they put out, what they noted yesterday, what they noted in there is that this is meant to, one, the first bullet was about protecting privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties, and the First Amendment. They said the primary mission is to establish best practices practices to ensure that efforts to understand and respond to disinformation are done in ways that protect privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties.
Look, we all know that this is a bad sign. We all know that this is authoritarianism from the Democratic Party, plain and simple. And the thing is, they're just formalizing what was previously informal when they were twisting the arms of social media executives in order to advantage their candidates in the last election cycle. Because under the Obama administration, they did something very similar. Operation Choke Point, which I've talked about multiple different times, doesn't get enough play amongst the right wing. It's like they all forgot about everything that stopped happening 8 days ago. This was the Obama administration going out to financial institutions and putting pressure on them to not do business with organizations that the Obama administration did not like. If you were a legal, federally licensed firearm dealership, you had the potential of your banking situation being thrown out the window because behind the scenes, without any law or justification, the Attorney General's office was putting pressure on your financial institutions to deny you banking under the idea that you might potentially, theoretically, hypothetically, and maybe metaphorically be guilty of a crime. They were doing that repeatedly to target the political opponents. This is what the Democratic Party does. They do it out in the open, and we all pretend or forget about it once it's uncovered, and it's absurd in every possible way. This is what's going on. This is reality. And one of the funniest things about this disinformation board, one of the funniest things about the response to the notable backlash against the government trying to formalize the censorship regime, was for them to deliver their first edict on what's disinformation, which is, of course, that the censorship board is, in fact, a censorship board. Because, of course, when you're throwing out the First Amendment to the Constitution, when you're getting rid of a foundational first principle of this nation, you have to replace it with a new first principle. So when you ask the Censorship Bureau to come up with a new first principle, the first thing they come up with is don't talk about the Censorship Bureau. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. You can follow me on all my social medias. You can support me via the support links in the description box. This has been me talking about the Biden administration's Censorship Bureau. Till next time.